you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Tables turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people. It is G, and we are back in the building. You know what time it is. You know what it is. Here to drop my reaction to the Merseyside derby win against Everton last night. But before we dive into that, you can see it scrolled across the bottom. We're on the road to 300 subscribers. So please make sure you smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please make sure you are liking the video. It only takes 2 seconds to do. So please, I would much appreciate if you guys could do that for me. So let's dive into it, man. Let's dive into it. As I said, here for the Merseyside derby win. Liverpool winning 2-0 against Everton last night up at Anfield. Morale boosting win, hopefully anyway. You know, I guess only time will tell with that. But obviously in isolation, looking at the game, yeah, I think obviously, you know, Everton coming into this game off the back of a 1-0 win against Arsenal. You know, so we saw all of their strengths. I would probably say, I wouldn't even say really quality, but we saw all of their strengths against Arsenal, what they could potentially pose, you know, against top sides, sides who like to keep the ball, obviously with possession and things like that. And I think that's what we were all, you know, myself included, that's what we were kind of worried about, you know, prior to the game, you know, in regards to, you know, we looked at their midfield, and especially with the news that, you know, Thiago's going to be injured for a few weeks now. You know, we kind of looked at that midfield. We then heard Klopp obviously speak about, you know, the players who might potentially come back in. So your Fabinho's, your Hendo's, specifically Hendo more so. I don't think we kind of foresaw Fabinho potentially playing. And I think, you know, we looked at that and thought, you know, the battle's going to be won and lost potentially in midfield, because I felt anyway, because that's where Everton are at their strongest. But, you know, as the game how the game panned out, and, you know, with the way that things went, it's Everton's midfield were non-existent, to be honest with you. It was a weird game. It was a weird game, and this is what happens when Liverpool win. And you guys know me, you know how I am with certain things. You know, I never get too high, never get too low with certain things. So whether it's defeat, I'm not going to get too bogged down with it. You know, we just try to, you know, I guess nitpick and stuff like that. And again, with the wins as well, especially with this season and how this season has gone. I think that's what I was looking for the most, you know, having a conversation, replying to a tweet on Twitter last night. Big up Tom, by the way, you know, speaking about that first half, and with the way that the first half kind of went, it was like, it wasn't great, to be honest with you. And big up Tom again, by the way, because I felt like, you know, he was probably going to get backlash, you know, for saying that, you know, because Liverpool winning and, you know, all of these kind of things. So people are going to be like, oh, you know, you don't complain when you win. But I think what we're seeing now from Liverpool, especially this season, and in the last few months, to be honest, since the World Cup ended, is that we don't get both performance and wins. It seems kind of like a thing where we get either or, to be honest with you. And if I'm being honest, I can't really remember a game where we performed really, really well. Manchester City pops into my head. Maybe Napoli as well, although context, you know, they're already through, weren't really that bothered. You know, I think they were going to top the group anyway. So, you know, context. But I think the Manchester City game is probably the one that really sticks out, you know, again, where we performed well and won. You know, we were able to get the two together, something that, you know, we are used to, you know, so in the last 4 or 5 seasons, you know, we are quite used to with Jurgen Klopp. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to kind of almost expect that, you know, with Liverpool. And of course, if they're going to be falling short of things like that, then, you know, as has happened this season with fans and pundits and, you know, all these kind of personnel, people are going to get onto you. People are definitely going to get onto you. You know, they're not going to be happy with things that are going on. And when we're looking at last night, I think it was like we got the win, obviously. So that's one thing ticked off. We got the win. So we'll go through the positives. Got the win, clean sheet as well. Merseyside derby. So, you know, those two things, very, very key, very important, you know, with how bad we have been defensively this season. Um, it's been very difficult, and I feel sorry for Alisson because he's been our player of the season. I don't think it's even close with anyone else. I don't think it's anyone even remotely close. Um, and where he's been our best player this season, I always think those kind of things don't really bode well. When your goalkeeper's been your best player of the season, that just tells me straight away that he's being used too much, that he's having to save your asses more often than not, and that's not something that we're kind of used to. Again, under Jurgen Klopp, especially again since Alisson Van Dijk kind of came in, we haven't really had to rely upon them. Yes, in moments, as because they are world-class players. So in moments, that's where I expect to rely upon you. But in a general sense, I don't really feel that if we're playing how we usually play or how we've been playing over the last few seasons, we don't need to realistically worry about all of that. They'll come with their tackles and their saves every now and again. But overall, the team should be doing enough. And obviously this season, we haven't been doing it. But, last night, Alisson, kind of a bystander. If I'm being totally honest with you, obviously Van Dijk on the bench, Diogo Jota, Roberto Firmino, all on the bench, coming back from their injuries. Van Dijk obviously didn't get on and stuff like that. So, which is good. I think, I think it was pretty good that we didn't have to rely upon him to come in and potentially like save the day or anything like that, because that could have had hindrance upon his recovery later on. So that's a plus point. The midfield battle, as I mentioned before, a lot of talk now, myself included, and this is where you got to have that conversation. You got to have that conversation. We all looked at last night. Again, it's a Merseyside derby. Everton coming into this game, buoyed by their win, new manager bounce, all these kind of little things. So they're coming into it, I feel, a lot more positive than Liverpool were. Liverpool, obviously, of course, not, losses to Brighton, losses to Wolves, losses to Brentford, all these kind of little things, not playing well, team kind of disjointed, this, that, and third, as we already know. And when you're coming into a game like this, as we've said, and as people have said many a time, form kind of goes out the window. It doesn't really matter, it's just it's one of those one-off kind of games. Anybody could win it. To be honest, it doesn't matter if you've come in and you're on a 10-game winning run. You come up against your rivals, especially Liverpool versus Everton. You're coming up against your rivals. They want to get the win as badly as you do. So it's then going to come down to what happens. The quality on the pitch in itself. And I think that when I looked at that midfield battle, obviously we had Bajcetic. He kind of played in a left central midfield role. Obviously with Thiago being injured, Fabinho came back in, Henderson came back in. That was always inevitable derby game. Klopp trusts him, so he's going to throw him back in. It's so funny with Henderson. I always feel like when we get really onto Henderson, like when it's really like, oh God, we've actually had enough of him, he comes back in or he plays a game and he didn't play shit last night. I don't think he was rubbed. I don't think anyone was, to be honest with you. I think the team in a general sense was decent as well. But I think when he comes back in, then he puts in like a semi-calm performance, and then you get both sides of things. You'll get the side of people who really love Henderson and won't say a bad word about him because he's our captain, and kind of blinded by that kind of loyalty. They'll turn around and say, oh, but look what he did, he wasn't the worst, and this, that, and blah blah blah. And then you get the other side of people who still obviously, of course, are going to say he's shit, blah blah blah, don't want to see him play. And again, I kind of fall into that kind of bracket of people in regards to, I don't really want him playing. But again, when you look at context and when you look at the teams that we're playing and stuff like that, he should be good enough to come into games like this. Although it is a Merseyside derby, he should still be good to come in, to games like this. But one player I wanted to kind of focus on in this was obviously Bajcetic. Was he my man of the match? Yeah, probably just edges it. I did think that Trent and Robbo played pretty decently. Maybe it might be between the three of them, to be honest with you. I think you could pick any one of the three. But he was the one that I was kind of really focusing on, because when I did my predictions, and guys, make sure you check out the Jerry James show, where we just spoke about our predicted lineups and stuff like that. Obviously mine was completely way off, but I'd done that for a reason. One of the players I did look at was obviously Bajcetic, and the reason being was because I felt that 18 years old, of course, just coming into a team, he's coming to a really poor team as well. So, there's going to be pressure you know, of all kinds, you know, pressure of all kinds, you know, coming in, you know, the fans are desperate, you know, for, you know, someone to kind of galvanize that midfield. We obviously recognize, you know, seems like more so than Klopp, we seem to recognize that the midfield is obviously a problem area. So of course, when someone comes in, it doesn't matter what his age, whether he was 18, whether it was Arthur Melo, it doesn't really matter. Anyone coming in and being a fixture in this side, you know, we're looking at and we're thinking, okay, what are you going to bring that, you know, the other guys are not bringing? And I think with Bajcetic, what we've got with him is, I think mostly what I look at is he's young, he's energetic, he's a good ball player as well, not to take away from his ability. Really good ball player, can play in these tight spaces pretty well. So, you know, again, only 18 years of age. How he pans out, I have no idea. I think there's going to be a few factors that come into play over the next couple of seasons, and obviously with the trust that Jurgen Klopp may or may not have in him. But when I'm, you know, looking at Bajcetic, you know, again, played in that kind of left central midfield role, obviously filled in that kind of, you know, Thiago kind of filling in, helping out, you know, that left-hand side. Ventured forward just a little bit, but not too much. Did get a shot off at goal. When we look at his numbers for the game against Everton, you know, 26 out of 34 passes, 76% pass rate, 2 chances created, which was first, I think, with Darwin Núñez, 51 touches, completed 1 out of the 2 dribbles. He won an aerial duel, 7 tackles attempted, which was first in the game, and obviously 1 clearance. Now, you know, you look at that, and that's kind of it's an all-round performance. It is an all-round performance, hence why he would be in my 3 in terms of man of the match for the game. I think when we come with Bajcetic, and I may or may not do a video, you know, on him, we'll wait and see. Just make sure you hit that notification. But I think when we look at Bajcetic, I think what he is at this moment, it's like there was no real, well, it could have gone either way. I think there was no real lose-lose situation with him coming into the side. What we got to understand is the team is so bad that anything that even just looks semi-good, it doesn't even have to be as good as Bajcetic actually is. Anything that looks semi-good, a bit like what Elliott was like at the beginning of the season, even if you're putting in those kind of performances, because it's so much better than what we're actually seeing in that midfield area, no one's realistically going to get on to you too much. So you know what I mean? It's not going to be, and he's only 18, so people are obviously then trying to guard against that. You know, he's only 18, let's not put too much pressure and stuff like that. I don't believe in all of that anyway. At the end of the day, if you're young enough to then put on the shirt, you're young enough to get criticized. Of course, I'm not criticizing Bajcetic in this game, but in a general sense, if you're old enough to put on the shirt, then you're old enough to, you know, get criticized just like the first team players. I guess the only difference is you still get criticized, which I think is absolutely fair. I just think then you would just understand it a lot better, as opposed to a Fabinho. You know, you don't quite understand why someone so experienced, someone who's won so many trophies, you know, played at the highest levels for so many years, you know, is performing so poorly, you know, this season. But with Bajcetic, if he was performing poorly or anything like that, you would still get onto him, which I think, again, rightly so. You cannot escape that. You're at, you know, one of the biggest clubs in the world, but you would just understand it a little better. And I think when he came into the squad, he kind of provided us with that kind of extra bit of oomph that we needed, a bit of guile as well. Got similar traits to like a Thiago. I haven't got a clue what position he's going to play, you know, in the future, but I think it is quite key to see, you know, how that kind of pans out. He's only 18 years old. Does trust him so much so that he's willing to put that much faith in an 18-year-old moving on to next season? Does that then mean it then impacts what we do in the transfer window? You know, with certain players coming back, and this is why I say I might do a video on that, because it's going to be very interesting to see what happens between now really and the end of summer. If Bajcetic continues playing really, really well, does Klopp think, you know what, I've got my midfielder here. That's 1 guaranteed midfielder for next season alongside Thiago. That's 2 guaranteed midfielders next season. Do we just need 1 more with Morton coming back as well? Lots of questions. So, you know, it's going to, like I said, it's just going to be really, really interesting to see. But last night, I felt like he wasn't going to be able to handle the physicality of the game. I thought Everton were going to come out a lot better than they did, which also makes me think as well when I'm looking at the game. Again, I don't want to throw negatives. We just won 2-0, you know, Merseyside derby, but you know, unfortunately, content creator, we got to find We got to find the details in the performances and stuff like that. Um, were Everton really bad, and then we just were just not as bad, so it looked better? Like I really don't actually know. I think with games like this, it will tell in the next 5 to 10 games. I think that's when we look back at results, and then we can say, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about, is this the turn of the corner? Nah, you can't. There's no such thing as a turning the corner after one game. That turning a corner is something that you see after a succession of games. So in our next, between now and I would say the end of, the middle of March, actually. I'd say between now and the middle of March, so for the next month, that's where we really will be able to see, okay, cool. You know what? That game against Everton that we had, where we put in that performance, meaty kind of performance, but we got the win, we got the clean sheet. It was able to start us on a run of games where we're now getting the performance back. We're now getting the wins in that we deserve to get with the performances. So then we can, kind of move on. And I think that's where I stand, obviously, with things. So I would be very interested to know how everyone else kind of feels about that. But with last night, again, it's an intense game. The rivalry between, we saw what Robertson, at the end there, you probably saw in the thumbnail, laughing away at, Jordan Pickford, Connor Cody. That's what the Merseyside derby is all about. The fans, probably the loudest I've heard them this season, maybe this Manchester City game. I can't really remember hearing the crowd really, really behind the team. Very, very quiet this season, Anfield. And that's saying something. I usually expect to hear Anfield blasted, right through the television, or if I'm in the pub or anything like that, I expect to hear it, through the TV, like I do with other clubs. But this season hasn't really been there at all. The support hasn't really been there, which has surprised me quite a bit, because the players do feed off that, especially when we're at home. The players feed off that kind of energy, and if they don't feel that the fans are connected with them, it makes it so much more difficult. Obviously, the two go hand in hand. If the team are performing poorly, the fans are going to, show their frustrations in, different ways, and boos and, shoutings and, stuff like that. But ultimately, the two go hand in hand. So, Bajcetic, the midfield area, I think, I think we just lower the expectations with him. Let him do his thing. I'm all about that. Just let the guy do his thing, man. Let him just continue just playing games. Klopp trusts him. Cool. I now feel like, at the beginning of the season, myself, Jerry, Roms, we spoke about Bajcetic. We spoke about how good he actually was on the ball and things like that. I don't think we didn't foresee this season, so I don't think we thought that he would be this much of a fixture in the side, especially, usurping, Fabinho in that midfield. But if he's going to be a fixture in the side, if Klopp thinks he's ready, we've got games against Real Madrid coming up. I don't want to say that's the real test, but that will show us, what kind of level he's at when he's up against real quality, and a different kind of quality. The European quality is always going to be different. It's always going to be different. Will Klopp, just revert back to type and just go with experience, in them kind of games? It's going to be interesting to kind of see. But, Bajcetic, I felt last night, decent performance. I mean, if I had to give a rating, maybe a 7. I felt like, it was a very, very decent performance. Cool, calm. He kind of shocked me anyway with that kind of performance. Like I said, I didn't feel that, he was going to be ready for a game like this. I felt that Klopp would prefer to go with more experienced players in this game. And he showed me different. He showed me that he is, kind of ready. Obviously, again, like I said, Everton didn't really pose the kind of threats that I thought they were going to. Maybe because they couldn't. Maybe were we that good that they couldn't? I mean, they almost nearly scored before we broke away with the counter-attack for Salah's goal. But ultimately, as the game kind of panned out, he held his own, man. So I have to big him up on that, man. He really did surprise me, in that effect. And I think now going forward, I'm a lot more comfortable with him being in that midfield. I wasn't really before. As I said, me, guys, I don't get gassed over one performance or anything like that, because context is so key in this. We are really, really poor this season. So, it's very easy for anybody to come into this midfield or even into this team and just provide some level of a spark. So I wanted to see if this was something that he can maintain. And I think that I've seen him in different games now. Merseyside derby, quite intense. The rivalry, the hate and all these things. I've seen him in that. Looks really good. Against passing teams like a Wolves and like a Brighton, we were shit in those games, but he was pretty decent himself, in isolation in those type of games. So man, I think, from now until, I guess, unless we need to give him a break, which I don't think we would probably need to. I think we've got enough breaks in between. yeah, man, keep him in the side. Keep him in the side. Now moving on to this guy. Moving on to my guy, Mo Salah. Mo Salah. Mo Salah. Mo Salah. Now, obviously, I don't know where Roms and Jerry and Ish are. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know where they're hiding. I don't know where they're hiding at this present moment in time. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry, they already know. I'll be giving them I'll be sending them the Salah's numbers and things like that in group chats and stuff like that. They can't hide away from me for too much longer. Yeah, I mean, big up Monts. Yeah, I mean, we've been backing up boy. But all jokes aside, Mo Salah yesterday, last night, should I say? Again, another. You know what was so weird about Salah's performance? When we're looking at Salah here, his ball progression and touch map, in the game. I felt like he was a lot more active, as you can see here. Look at his touch map there. All the way from right wing back position all the way up until obviously that right wing position there on the third picture. The touch map there. Look at his ball carries. If you do look at his ball carries, he had 11 progressive carries. Altogether, he had 16 carries in the game. But again, majority of those were progressive carries. If you look at the first picture, the passes in open play, total completed passes was 30. Completed progressive passes was only 2. Maybe because of the position. But again, the fact that he was a lot more involved in the game. I didn't feel, though, which was so weird, I didn't feel that this performance was so much more different to most of his other recent performances. Yes, he was a lot more involved, so to speak, in the game. Was that because obviously Milenko on that side was pushing up quite a bit, was trying to, obviously he was also trying to like nick the ball off Salah, so sometimes he might not judge it, or he was always just out of position and stuff like that. Maybe that played a part, I don't really know. But when I was watching him last night, I didn't feel like he was that much different, than what he usually is, kind of thing. So, I'm going to check out the stats and stuff from his previous games, and it's interesting that those kind of stats never seem to come up when he's playing poorly. But, when I was watching him, I just felt like you're not too much dissimilar from the performances I've seen. Yes, you're more involved in the game, but your involvement in the game is kind of the same as I've been seeing, to be honest with you. So it was like, obviously he got the goal, and again, largely thanks to Darwin Núñez. As I said, prior to the game, he's going to be like the outlet. He is going to be the guy, that we are constantly looking for. We played a lot of balls over the top for both Salah and Núñez, which, that's just one of them kind of things. We are, constantly always doing that. Look, Salah had, 6 shots on goal, 3 on target, touches in opponent's box was 8. He's ranked first for all of these. Pass attempts, 35. Pass completions, 31. Key passes, 1. Successful progressive passes, 2. Successful passes into final third, 1. That is something that he might need to just improve upon a little bit. Total carries, 16. Progressive carries, 11, which ranked him first. Successful take-ons, which was 3, which ranked him obviously second. It was just more of I just felt like it was like the Salah of old, but then you add a goal with it, kind of thing. Hence why I don't want to get too. And again, that's my guy. Everyone already knows. I'll always try to back Mo Salah as much as I possibly can, because he's my favorite player. I think he's the best player. Or one of, should I say, sorry, not the best, but one of the best players. In the team. A key cog in what Jurgen Klopp needs going forward. When he's on song, the team just happens to be on song. Whether that's just a coincidence, whether that's because of him. It is what it is. At the end of the day, we score, he scores, the team, then go out and win. But I just think that kind of performance, if he can keep putting in those kind of performances, I don't need every game, Manchester City 2-2 last year, where he's putting in those kind of runs. And I don't need that every single game, to be honest with you, because the reality is I know you can't put in those kind of games on a consistent enough basis. Especially over this last year, we haven't seen it anyway on a consistent basis. What I do know is you can at least put in the performances that you put in last night, and I think that if he can just continue that, get his goals here and there, assist or anything like that, I think everyone will be fine. I think then it's not too bad. Obviously, of course, we do want you to have those kind of Man City performances, in your locker, because at the end of the day, you are on 350 grand a week. So we kind of do expect you to, be pulling up some kind of trees. But ultimately, if you are not doing that too often, but still putting in last night's performances, I'm not going to have any beef with it, to be honest. Keep getting your goals, keep doing your thing. And you'll be good to go. And we move on to obviously Darwin Núñez, another player I was looking at. This is his stats from the game. Completed 14 out of 18 passes, 78%. 2 chances created. Got himself an assist. 35 touches, 5 shots. As per usual, this guy taking shots for fun. Completed 2 out of his 4 dribbles and 1-2 both of his aerial duels. Now, obviously, again, Mr. Mr. Chaos was back again in full effect. I think he likes those kind of games against those kind of oppositions. Against an Everton, gonna try and rattle you in the game. Someone like a Seamus Coleman, the guy is shameless sometimes. But, someone like that, when you come up against him, he's definitely on trying to rattle you as much as possible. Can you just withstand that and show everybody your skill? The first goal was all about Darwin Núñez, the breakaway, laid the pass off, got the pass back with a little 1-2. When you got that pass back, boom, just complete and utter pace. That goal, it's weird because I always feel like that goal almost epitomizes Jurgen Klopp's reign. Most of you remember, the goal against West Ham, I think in the orange kit, where we broke away from the corner a few years ago. We had Oxlade-Chamberlain in the team, Mane, Salah. I think they were all kind of involved in that goal. We all remember that goal. And that's what last night kind of reminded me of. That's kind of what I think of when I think about Jurgen Klopp Liverpool, is goals like that, breaking away on the counter. Because on the counter, we do have that pace up top in Mo and Darwin Núñez. Gakpo, not so much, but, he's got a little bit of pace. Enough, shall we say. And I think that when we did watch, Darwin Núñez kind of burst away, I think we all knew, well, let me take that back. In my mind, I was thinking this guy's going to try and just keep dribbling and go for a shot, or he's going to take too long. But again, he surprised me. Again, he did surprise me. And I think when you're looking at, these kind of numbers and stuff like that, this is just what Darwin Núñez is about. And I think what frustrates people like myself, anyway, not the ones who are really backing him, but people like myself, I think when we see games like this, it's like, yeah, sometimes in certain situations, you just got to be making better decisions. Again, he's young. Well, I say he's young. He's young in age, but in a football sense, I don't think he's that young, to be honest with you. I think he's at the right age for you to be doing certain things correctly. But in a sense, maybe just in his mind, he's quite young. So some of the decisions that he does make and some of the things that he does at times, it does leave you questioning him. Again, he took 5 shots, scored 0. So again, that conversion rate isn't going to get any better, unless he starts putting some of these into the back of the net. Obviously, I know the shots were just the shots. Some of them were just kind of, from like stupid angles and stuff like that. I mean, he's always willing to try. And that I will always give him, is that he's always willing to try. He's always willing to put himself about into the right areas. Do I want to see that? Not. I want to see it to. I want to see the output that goes with that, to be honest with you. A bit like Liverpool, to be honest with you. I'd like to see the performance with the output. And I think with him, what you're getting is the performances, but you ain't really getting the output. And how long that continues, I don't know. He will hit a purple patch like he did at the beginning of the season. I feel like he's going to just be one of those kind of guys throughout his career here, is that he'll just always keep hitting purple patch. Again, the next season is next season, so let's not worry too much about it. But I do think that next season he will be a lot more nullified as the season goes on, especially. But next season, I think certain teams will start to work him out in how they need to play against him. So it's about, can he switch up his game a little bit? Can he still be as effective? But again, that's next season. In regards to last night in itself, I thought he was the best attacker that we had, the outlet that we needed. As I said, we're going to get onto these two in a minute. When it came to our passages of play, I don't feel like we had that anyway. Hence the reason why, I put out a tweet, just mentioning about, that first half being quite intense and things like that. Everton seemed like they were happy to allow us to have the ball, but we weren't really creating much, to be honest with you. Obviously, our goal came from a breakaway. They almost scored, literally hit the bloody post. If that had gone in, game's completely different now, the energy and stuff like that. But we kept up that energy. We kept up that level of intensity, for periods of that second half. Obviously, every now and again, Everton were getting themselves a few chances and, getting in and around our box. But I felt like with him, he probably epitomized the performance the most, in my opinion. Even though I gave Bajcetic probably my man of the match, I felt like he epitomized that performance in terms of when he had the energy, we had the energy. When he was down, then we were kind of down. It was that kind of that kind of thing. But Darwin Núñez, he's one of them kind of players. I look at him. I don't want to say you like him or love him. I don't think it's. I don't think it's like you hate him or love him. Should I say? Sorry. I think he's just more. He's just whether he's your kind of taste. I think it's almost like, and I think Jamie Phillips, he mentioned this. It's a bit like Marmite. You either like it or you don't. But I feel like with him, maybe you end up trying Marmite and realize, oh, you know what? It's not even that bad. Me personally, I don't like Marmite, by the way. But in a general sense, like you try something that you thought that you wouldn't really like, and maybe you try it with something different. You know what I mean? Maybe you try it with a different front line, and maybe he just starts cooking. When Diaz and the Jota start coming back into play, all of a sudden now you're like, you know what? I actually don't mind that. To be honest, mixed in with this, it actually tastes all right. And I feel like that's the type of player that Darwin Núñez is going to be, but again, we'll just wait and see. We'll wait and see with him. But last night, and again, another decent performance from Darwin Núñez. Now, obviously, I got this up between Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Again, I said before the game, if Liverpool are going to win, if Liverpool are going to lose, it will be because we can't get Trent or Robbo, or if not both, kind of into the game. If they kind of get nullified, I feel like Liverpool, that's it for Liverpool. We ain't doing shit. But they were, I don't know how to really put it. It's weird. Like, if you take a look here, again, judge it for yourselves. I felt like they played, the weird thing is, I actually feel like they played well in a general sense in the game, but what they're actually good at, I don't think they did well, if that makes sense. So we can see here accurate crosses. Trent, who's on the right-hand side of your stats, and then Robbo's on the left-hand side. Robbo only completed 1 out of 5 crosses, which is at 20%. But look at Trent. Trent attempted 11 and only completed 1. That's poor. That is so poor. But then you look at obviously his long balls. He got himself 5 out of the 8, which is at 62%. And again, like I said, we're playing a lot of long balls to Salah and Darwin Núñez. We have become a very, very direct team with kind of almost 0 passages of play. We're becoming that kind of team. So, strap yourselves in, people, because I feel like that's what Jurgen Klopp wants us to do. Obviously, when you got the pace of Darwin Núñez and Mo, it does make sense in certain phases of play. As an overall, I don't feel like that's going to be sustainable, to be honest with you, because teams will just start to sit off, and then all of a sudden that ball doesn't even really become available. Hence why I feel that we do need to start learning different phases of play, passages of play and stuff like that. But for last night, the long balls of what was really winning us the game. He was able to push Everton's back line, just further back, get them into corners and things like that. So again, it kind of works, to that effect. We're looking here. Robbo didn't seem to not tackle anybody. Supposedly, he was too busy laughing in Pickford's face, to be honest. Trent, really good defensively last night. That was a very good defensive performance, I felt. Dwight McNeil, I never really felt was able to get a tune out of Trent, which was really good. Obviously, McNeil likes to cut in because he is left-footed and he's on that left-hand side. Does that work into Trent's favour? Who knows? But ultimately, I just felt like he couldn't really beat Trent, and Trent, in my opinion, put in a very, very decent performance. You can see here by the ground jewels. Trent won 5 out of the 7. Robbo won 3 out of the 4, so only missed 1. Again, what they are predominantly good at in the attacking sense, they weren't, in my opinion, that good. Yeah, the long balls and stuff, but that's that in itself. And so that metric in itself was pretty decent. But in terms of like crossings and stuff like that, they were both kind of poor, to be honest with you, which kind of surprised me. And I feel like I've been seeing that more so from Trent than Robbo, because Robbo has been decent in some games. Got himself obviously a fair few amount of assists. Obviously, I know he's got more than Trent, this season. But it's interesting to watch. It's almost like the roles are starting to reverse a little bit, because what we were seeing over the last few seasons was that, yes, Trent and Robbo both will get you assists and things like that, but it was more so Trent getting in the assists. He was more the primary playmaker, in that midfield. What I feel seeing now is it's almost changing, but we're not making Robbo the primary playmaker in the team. What we're making him is almost the energy on that side who can bring the team forward. So he's doing the same kind of thing in terms of what we need the team to do, but he's doing it in a different way. Trent was more the creator, Robbo's the energy. So I feel like maybe Klopp has potentially seen that. So I'll give him the credit if he has. Maybe he's seen that. Maybe Robbo's just taken more of the mantle and he's just, decided to just put it on his shoulders. But because he provides that much energy on that side, we've almost tried to utilize that. So you are seeing more of the attacks on that side anyway. And of course, that's the side with Darwin Núñez. So, it is just one of those things, maybe just subconsciously, because Núñez is on that side, we're going to be seeing a lot more of the ball as opposed to it being on the right-hand side where both Salah and Trent haven't really been that good. When we had Harvey Elliott in there as well, that side just wasn't really connecting, in any way, shape or form. So it's quite interesting to see the reverse in roles in where we like to attack from. But I think that now the onus is now more on Robbo to get himself further forward, whereas Trent has been kind of told, maybe just because of his positioning in games, his kind of defensive IQ is really, really low in my opinion. So I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons, or positional IQ is pretty low. So maybe that's something that Klopp has seen and said, you know what, from this side of things, we're going to just have you sitting tight a little bit. You can still pick out them 50, 60 yarders anyway from over here. So maybe you just start doing that and we try and hit Darwin and then, break away, like that. But, as I said, coming to the end of this, look, decent performance from the Reds out of 10. 6.57. I think one of the two, it's like somewhere even in between that is probably what I'm looking at in terms of the performance from the Reds. Will this be one of those games where we look back on, as I said, and it was we turned the corner with these kind of wins, performance and stuff like that? Will this be the mantra moving forward? Could we put in that same performance against a Real Madrid and get the same result? I don't think so, unless Madrid play really, really poorly. Then yeah, maybe so. But I do expect the intensity level against Madrid, especially at home anyway. I expect the intensity level to be really, really high against Real Madrid, which I don't know if they'll be able to handle that. Forget the quality; they've got way better quality in basically every single area. But when it comes to the intensity, it doesn't matter how much quality you do have, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to handle that. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see, what happens, in the future with that. And over the next couple of games, obviously got Newcastle away as well. Tough game. Defensively, they are so sound. So I do think that's going to be a game where we need to start learning different passages of play, because if we don't, I don't know how you break these guys down unless, we can try and get them to make a lot of mistakes and things like that. But, focusing on the Everton game, decent performance, nothing to get too excited about. But at the same time, there were, would I say, little positives within the win last night, mainly being by Cetic, how he performed in this kind of game. I think that was my biggest takeaway, from that, how he performed in a game of that kind of magnitude in terms of the rivalry and things like that. And he showed me something. He definitely showed me something. So again, long may it continue. If we can just keep this going, then, what we need to do now, especially as fans, I know we're going to get excited, get gassed, forget all of that. We move on to the next game. Cool. We need to go back to that mentality that we had, and we're not seeing it. I'm not seeing it from anybody, to be honest. The mentality of what, I even remember Jordan Henderson, players always coming out after each game. We won, cool, we move. That game is that game, we move. Let's stop even focusing on that game. It's irrelevant now. That game doesn't mean anything to us at this present moment in time. We move on to the next game. Can we pick up our next 3 points? Cool. Beat Newcastle. We move on to our next game. I think it's Madrid then next. Cool. Can we get the win against Madrid? Cool. We move on to our next game. Have that mentality. That is the mentality that we are missing at this football club. Have that mentality. Stop getting bogged down by our previous games, whether they be wins or losses or draws or anything like that, and we move on to the next game. I hope that is what I really, really hope I see from Liverpool, is that mentality. When I see that mentality, I'll have a lot more belief, in this team again. But we got the win. Merseyside derby victory over our arch rivals Everton. And yeah, we move up to the the high position of ninth. You know, we're really climbing the table at this present moment in time, but you know, we take what we can at this present moment in time. That is obviously the wrap up of my post match review. Like I said, as you can see, obviously scroll across the bottom, we are on the road to 300 subscribers. I think we're about 30 odd, roughly about 30 odd away. So guys, please make sure you smash that subscribe button. I'm going to be doing a few more videos over the next couple of weeks, so please make sure you hit that notification bell. May go live as well at some point this week potentially, but yeah, we'll see. We'll take it from there, and we'll kind of see, man. But I'm G, and I am out.